The starship descended through clouds of purple and gold as it approached the crystal palace of the Volanthi Empire. Queen Sarithka stood on her balcony and watched the small human vessel land in her courtyard with a mixture of curiosity and contempt. Her species had ruled 3 star systems for over 10,000 years, and they had never lost a single war. The humans had been foolish enough to challenge them at the border 6 months ago, and the Volanthi fleet had crushed their pathetic little armada. In less than 3 days now, the mammals came begging for peace, and she had demanded the ultimate price: a human male of noble blood would serve as her ceremonial consort. It was not about romance or companionship, it was about humiliation. It was about showing the galaxy what happened to species that dared to challenge the Volanthi Empire. The throne room fell silent as the massive doors swung open. Queen Sarithka sat upon her crystalline throne with all 6 of her amber eyes fixed on the entrance. Scales shimmered between deep purple and black as the light caught them. She stood nearly 8 feet tall with 4 powerful arms and a crown of bone ridges that marked her royal bloodline. Behind her stood General Vothran, her war chief and the most decorated soldier in the Empire. His scarred face twisted into a sneer as the human delegation entered. There were 3 human diplomats in formal black uniforms, walking with nervous steps. Behind them came the tribute queen. Sarithka felt her lip curl in disappointment. The human male was small. He barely reached her shoulder, and his frame was soft without any visible muscle. His skin was pale, and his hair was an unremarkable brown, and his eyes were a quiet gray that seemed to hold no fire at all. He wore simple linen clothes with no armor and no weapons and no jewelry. He carried nothing but a worn leather journal tucked under one arm. He walked barefoot across the polished floor as if he were strolling through a garden. The court erupted in whispers and barely concealed laughter. General Vothran stepped forward with his chest puffed out in disgust. "This is what humanity offers their queen," he bellowed so everyone could hear. "A pet." The humans stopped before the throne and looked up at the massive alien warriors surrounding him. He did not tremble. He did not beg. Simply smiled a gentle, easy smile and bowed his head. "My name is Marcus Cole," he said in a voice that was calm and pleasant. "I am told I make excellent company." More laughter echoed through the throne room. Queen Sarithka studied him with all 6 eyes, searching for any sign of deception or hidden strength. She found nothing. He seemed exactly what he appeared to be: soft, harmless, unremarkable. Human sent to fulfill a political obligation. "You are not what I expected," she said. Finally Marcus looked up at her, and his gray eyes met her amber ones without fear. "I rarely am," he replied. She did not know what to make of that answer. The queen assigned him quarters in the eastern wing, far from her own chambers and far from anything of importance. She gave him a small allowance and a single servant and permission to wander the palace grounds as he pleased. She expected him to complain or to demand better treatment or to at least show some sign of wounded pride. Instead, he thanked her graciously and asked if the palace had gardens. "We have the finest botanical collections in 3 star systems," one of her advisors replied with obvious confusion. "Wonderful," Marcus said with that same gentle smile. "I have always loved flowers." The court did not know what to make of him, and the days that followed Marcus Cole became invisible. He spent his mornings in the gardens learning the names of alien plants and how to care for them. He spent his afternoons in the kitchens, asking the servants to teach him Volanthi cooking techniques. He spent his evenings in the archives, playing strategy games with an elderly female named Kethra, who had served 3 generations of queens. He lost every game, but he never seemed frustrated. He just laughed and asked her to teach him where he went wrong. The servants found him strange but kind. He learned their names, which no noble had ever bothered to do. He asked about their families and their troubles, and he listened with genuine interest. When one of the kitchen workers fell ill, Marcus spent 3 days helping cover her duties without being asked. The guards found him amusing. He would bring them snacks from the kitchen and ask them questions about their training and their weapons and their battle tactics. They answered freely, because what threat could this soft little human possibly pose? He was barely strong enough to lift a Valanthe sword, let alone use one. The nobles found him beneath their notice. He never attended court functions or political meetings, never asked questions about military matters or trade agreements or alliance negotiations. He seemed to have no ambition and no agenda and no purpose beyond his simple daily routines. General Vathron saw him once in the gardens and spat on the ground in disgust. "The humans send us their garbage," he muttered to his officers. "They mock us with this weakling." Marcus overheard, but he said nothing. He just continued pruning his flowers with careful, patient hands. 3 months passed, and Queen Sarithka barely thought of her human consort at all. She had an empire to rule and wars to plan and conspiracies to unravel. The soft little mammal in her gardens was the least of her concerns. She did not notice that he had learned to speak 3 Valanthe dialects. She did not notice that he had memorized the names and political allegiances of every noble house. She did not notice that he knew which servants carried secrets and which guards drank too heavily and which officials could be bribed. She did not notice that behind those quiet gray eyes, a sharp mind was cataloging every detail of her palace and her people and her empire. Marcus Cole tended his flowers and smiled his gentle smile, and everyone who saw him reached the same conclusion. He was harmless. He was unremarkable. He was forgettable. They were wrong. 5 years had passed since the human arrived at the Crystal Palace. Marcus Cole had become a fixture of court life, like the fountains in the courtyard or the ancient tapestries on the walls. Everyone knew him, and no one paid him any real attention. He was simply there, the palace gardener who happened to be a consort to the queen, a strange soft creature who smiled too much and never caused any trouble. But something had changed in those 5 years. Queen Sarithka found herself thinking about the human more often than she expected. At first, she had summoned him to her chambers out of boredom. Endless parade of scheming nobles and ambitious generals had worn her patience thin, and she wanted something different. She wanted to hear about the strange wet planet called Earth, with its blue oceans and white clouds and endless variety of life. Marcus told her stories of thunderstorms that shook the ground, and mountains that touched the sky, and creatures that ranged from tiny insects to massive whales that sang songs across entire oceans. He told her about human history with all its wars and disasters and triumphs, told her about art and music and literature, and the 1,000 different ways humans had found to express their brief, fragile lives. She found herself fascinated despite her better judgment. "Your people are survivors," she admitted one night as they sat together on her balcony, watching the 3 moons rise. "I did not expect that." Marcus poured her a glass of wine from a bottle he had selected himself. "We are adaptable," he agreed. "It is the only thing we are really good at." "You have no natural weapons," she said. "No claws or fangs or venom. No scales or shells to protect you. No, your senses are weak compared to most species." "True, and yet you survived," she said with something close to wonder in her voice. "You clawed your way up from the mud and reached the stars." "We are very stubborn," Marcus said with that easy smile she had grown to know so well. "We do not like being told something is impossible." She watched him move as he poured her wine and arranged small snacks on a tray. His motions were smooth and economical, without any wasted movement. She had never noticed that before, or perhaps she had noticed and simply refused to think about what it meant. As the years passed, she began summoning him more frequently. They would talk for hours about everything and nothing. Made her laugh, which was something no one else had managed in decades. Listened to her fears and frustrations without judgment and without trying to use them against her. He held her after nightmares without ever asking what she dreamed. She told herself it meant nothing. He was just a convenient companion, a pet, as General Vathron called him, but Somewhere deep in her heart, she knew she was lying to herself. The assassination attempt came on a cold night in the 5th year. Queen Sarithka was alone in her private study, reviewing military reports when the door burst open. A young Volanti male rushed in with a ceremonial dagger raised high and murder in his eyes. She recognized him as the son of a disgraced noble house that she had stripped of lands and titles. 2 years ago, he was fast, he was trained, he was going to kill her before her guards could respond. She saw the blade descending, and she knew she was going to die then. Marcus was there. She did not see where he came from or how he moved so quickly. One moment she was alone facing death, and the next moment her human consort was standing between her and the assassin. The attacker did not even have time to react. Marcus grabbed his wrist and twisted in one fluid motion. Crack of breaking bone echoed through the chambers. The dagger fell from nerveless fingers, and Marcus caught it before it hit the ground. He drove it into the assassin's throat with a single precise thrust. Whole thing took less than 3 seconds. The young Volanti collapsed at her feet with his own blade buried to the hilt in his neck. Marcus stood over the body, breathing evenly and calmly, as if he had done nothing more strenuous than pick a flower. There was not a single drop of blood on his linen shirt. The guards burst in moments later with weapons drawn and shouts of alarm. They found their queen unharmed and her human consort standing quietly beside a corpse. "What happened?" the guard captain demanded. "An assassin," Marcus said simply. "I stopped him." "You?" The captain looked at the soft little human and then at the dead warrior on the floor. "How did you? Lucky, I suppose." Marcus smiled that gentle smile. "I was in the right place at the right time." The guards accepted this explanation because what other explanation could there be? Marcus Cole was just a gardener. He must have gotten lucky. But Queen Sarithka saw what they did not see. She saw the way Marcus had moved with lethal precision and perfect control. She saw the way he had killed without hesitation or remorse. She saw the way he stood now, with his hands relaxed at his sides, but his weight balanced and ready. She looked into his gray eyes, and for the first time she felt afraid of him. "Leave us," she commanded her guards. They hesitated, but obeyed. When the door closed, she turned to face the human she thought she knew. "How did you do that?" she asked. "I told you," he said. "I was lucky." "Do not lie to me." His smile did not waver, but something shifted in his eyes. Something cold and calculating flickered behind that gentle mask. "What do you want me to say, my queen?" She did not have an answer. She spent that night alone in her chambers, unable to sleep. She kept seeing the way he moved. She kept hearing the sound of breaking bone. She kept wondering who Marcus Cole really was and whether she had ever known him at all. The Volanthi Empire had stood united for 10,000 years, but cracks were forming in its foundation. General Vothran had grown tired of peace. He remembered the glory of conquest and the thrill of victory, and he hungered for war once more. The humans had proven themselves weak, and their worlds were rich with resources that the Empire could use. Why should the Volanthi respect a treaty with inferior creatures? Why should they bow to a queen who chose diplomacy over dominance? He began meeting secretly with the noble houses that shared his vision. House Cathful, whose warriors had grown restless without enemies to fight. House Morthan, whose merchants wanted access to human trade routes without the burden of fair agreements. House Valkyra, whose ancient hatred of outsiders had never faded. 3 of the 7 great houses pledged their support to the general. Together, they commanded nearly 5,000 soldiers loyal to them personally. The plan was simple. They would strike during the harvest festival. When the palace guard was spread thin, they would capture the queen and force her to dissolve the treaty with humanity. Then they would execute her, and Vothran would take the throne as military regent. The human worlds would burn within. Yerd was a good plan. It was a secret plan, but secrets have a way of slipping through the cracks. Marcus Cole learned of the conspiracy from a kitchen servant named Yelsa. Her sister worked in General Vothran's household, and she had overheard things that frightened her. She did not know who to trust, so she told the kind human who had helped her when she was sick. He listened carefully and thanked her and asked her to tell no one else what she had heard. He learned more details from a palace guard named Terventerven owed Marcus money from a gambling debt that Marcus had quietly paid off 2 years ago. The guard did not even realize he was sharing valuable information. He thought he was just gossiping with a harmless friend Marcus pieced together the rest from his old friend Kethra, the palace archivist. She had access to records and correspondence that revealed the movement of troops and supplies. She trusted Marcus completely because he had been kind to her for 5 years, without ever asking for anything in return. By the time Marcus understood the full scope of the conspiracy, he knew exactly who was involved and exactly when they would strike. He went to the Queen. He found her in her private chambers, reviewing trade agreements with a weary expression. She looked up when he entered, and he saw the wariness in her eyes that had been there since the assassination attempt. She no longer knew what to think of him. "We need to talk," he said. "About what?" "General Vothran is planning to kill you." Her scale shifted to a darker shade, which he recognized as a sign of shock. "What are you talking about?" "He is allied with 3 noble houses," Marcus continued in a calm, steady voice. "House Cathfall and House Morthan and House Volkira have all pledged soldiers to his cause." "How do you know this?" "I listen." "You are a gardener," she said with growing anger. "You cook and you tend flowers and you lose at strategy games." "I know what I appear to be." "Then how can you possibly know about a military conspiracy?" Marcus met her gaze without flinching. "Did you really think my government sent you someone useless?" The words hung in the air between them. She stared at him as if seeing him for the first time. The gentle smile was gone. Soft, harmless mask had finally cracked. The man standing before her now had cold, calculating eyes and a stillness about him that reminded her of a predator waiting to strike. "Who are you?" she whispered. "My name really is Marcus Cole," he said. "I was born on Earth 34 years ago, and I have served in the human military since I was 18. You are a soldier. I am something more than that." He began to pace slowly as he spoke. "When humanity lost the war 5 years ago, our leaders knew we could not survive another conflict with the Volanthi Empire, so you sent me as a spy." "No," he said. "I was sent to ensure the peace would hold. By watching us, by understanding you." He stopped pacing and faced her directly. "I have spent 5 years learning everything about your empire and your people and your politics. I know which nobles are loyal and which ones dream of rebellion. I know which generals can be trusted and which ones hunger for war. I know the strengths and weaknesses of every major power center in your government. And I have been sending reports to Earth every single month." She felt sick. Every moment they had shared flashed through her mind. Every conversation, every touch, every whispered word. Had any of it been real? "The nights we spent together," she said, and her voice was hollow. "Was that part of your mission?" Something flickered in his eyes, something that looked almost like pain. "The mission was to gather intelligence and maintain the peace," he said carefully. "Nothing more." "That does not answer my question." He was silent for a long moment. "No," he finally said. "No, it does not." She wanted to scream at him. She wanted to have him executed for his deception. But there was no time for that. "You said Vothran is planning to attack," she said, forcing herself to focus on the immediate threat. "When?" 3 days, Marcus replied, "on the first moon of the harvest festival." "I cannot stop him in 3 days," she said with despair creeping into her voice. "My loyalists are scattered and his forces outnumber my personal guard 10 to 1. You cannot stop him alone." Marcus agreed. "But you are not alone." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device she did not recognize. "I have already contacted Earth," he said. "A special operations team is en route, and they will arrive in 2 days. You are bringing human soldiers to my palace. I am bringing the best killers my species has ever produced. She stared at him. The man she thought she knew, the gentle gardener who made her laugh, the soft, harmless human who had shared her bed. He was a weapon. He had always been a weapon, and now she had to trust him with her life. Why should I believe anything you say? She demanded. You have lied to me for 5 years. Because I could have let Vothran kill you, he said simply. I could have let your empire tear itself apart. Earth would have been safe either way. Instead, I am choosing to save your throne. Why? He looked at her with those gray eyes, and for just a moment, the mask slipped completely. She saw exhaustion and loneliness and something else. Something that looked almost like love, because some lies become true if you tell them long enough. He said quietly. She did not know what to say to that, so she said nothing, and she began to prepare for war. The harvest festival began under 3 silver moons. The crystal palace glowed with lights and music and laughter as the Volanti celebrated another year of prosperity. Servants rushed through the halls, carrying trays of exotic food and drinks. Nobles gathered in their finest clothes to gossip and scheme and dance. None of them knew that death was coming. General Vothran waited until the 3rd hour past midnight. When the celebrations had dulled the senses of guards and guests alike, he gave the signal and his soldiers began to move. They came through the service tunnels and the back gates and the windows that had been left unlocked by traitors within the palace staff. They killed quickly and quietly. Guards fell with their throats cut before they could raise an alarm. Loyal servants were dragged into dark corners and silenced within an hour. The conspirators controlled every entrance and exit to the throne room. Vothran marched through the palace with 200 of his finest warriors. At his back, his scales gleamed with the red and gold colors of victory. His sword hung at his side, polished and hungry for royal blood. He had dreamed of this moment for years. He burst through the doors of the throne room, expecting to find chaos and terror. Instead, he found Queen Sarithka sitting calmly on her crystalline throne. Handful of loyal guards stood before her with weapons drawn, and beside her stood her human consort, still wearing that foolish linen shirt and still smiling that pathetic, gentle smile. Of Vothran laughed. The sound echoed through the chamber, harsh and triumphant. You brought your pet, he bellowed. How touching. He can watch you die. Marcus Cole said nothing. He simply stood there with his hands clasped behind his back. Kill the guards, Vothran commanded. Take the queen alive. His soldiers surged forward with weapons raised. Loyal guards braced themselves for a hopeless last stand. Then Marcus spoke. Actually, he said in that calm, pleasant voice, I brought guests. The massive doors behind Vothran exploded. Inward shards of crystal and metal flew through the air as shaped charges detonated with perfect precision. Human soldiers poured through the breach. They did not look like the soft diplomats the Volanti had seen before. These humans wore black armor that absorbed light. They moved in perfect formation without a single wasted motion. Their weapons were compact and lethal, and they fired with devastating accuracy. The first volley cut down 30 of Vothran's soldiers before they could even turn around. The general screamed orders as his forces scrambled to face this new threat. Volanti warriors were fierce and strong, and they had never lost a war, but they had never faced anything like this. The human soldiers fought like machines. Every shot found its target. Every movement was calculated for maximum efficiency. They did not shout or roar or show any emotion at all. They simply killed with cold mechanical precision. But the true horror was Marcus Coley stepped down from the throne platform and walked into the chaos of battle. He did not use a gun. 2 blades appeared in his hands as if they had always been there. Simple steel with no decoration, nothing fancy, nothing special. He began to dance. A Volanti warrior lunged at him with a massive sword, and Marcus slipped past the blade like water. His knife opened the warrior's throat before the swing was complete. Another came at him from the left, and he spun low under the attack. His second blade found the gap between armor plates and sliced through vital organs. 3 more rushed him at once, and he flowed between them like smoke. Every motion was lethal. Every step left a body he had spent 5 years watching them train. He had spent 5 years learning their techniques and their weaknesses. He knew how they moved before they moved. He knew where they were vulnerable. He knew exactly how to kill them. General Lothram watched his elite guard fall one by one. These were his best warriors. They had conquered worlds and crushed rebellions and never known defeat. And this small, soft human was cutting through them like they were children. Fear crept into the general's hearts for the first time in his long life. "Face me yourself, coward," he roared, drawing his ceremonial sword. Marcus stopped. He stood in a circle of corpses with blood dripping from his blades. His linen shirt was soaked red. His face was spattered with gore, but his breathing was calm and even, as if he had been doing nothing more strenuous than tending his garden. "As you wish," he said. Vuthran charged with all the fury and skill of a lifetime of combat. His blade was a blur of deadly steel. He was the greatest warrior in the Volanthi Empire. He had never lost a duel. He had never even been challenged. Marcus did not try to match his strength. He simply was not there when the blade arrived. He moved inside the general's guard, faster than should have been possible. His first knife severed the tendons in Vothran's right arm. His second knife punched through the gap beneath the general's chin. Vothran's eyes went wide with shock. He tried to speak, but only blood came out. He collapsed to his knees and then fell forward onto his face. The greatest warrior in 3 star systems died in less than 3 seconds. Remaining conspirators threw down their weapons and surrendered. The battle was over. Silence fell over the throne room, broken only by the moans of the wounded. Marcus stood among the dead with his bloody blade still in his hands. He looked up. Queen Sarethka on her throne. Their eyes met across the carnage. She saw the exhaustion in his face. She saw the weight of 5 years of deception and loneliness. She saw the killer he had always been hiding beneath that gentle mask. And she saw something else, something human, something vulnerable, something real. "The conspirators are dead," he said in a voice that was suddenly very tired. "The noble houses will fall in line now. Your empire is secure." "And Earth?" she asked. "Earth was always safe," he replied. "The treaty was real. I just made sure it stayed that way." He wiped his blades clean on a fallen soldier's cloak. "I will submit to whatever judgment you decide is appropriate," he said. "I deceived you and I used you, and I deserve whatever punishment you see fit." She looked at the bodies scattered across her throne room. She looked at the human soldiers who had saved her life. She looked at the man who had been her companion for 5 years, the man who had lied to her every single day, the man who had just killed 100 warriors to protect her. "Clean yourself up," she said finally. "We will speak in the morning." Marcus bowed his head. He walked out of the throne room without another word. The human soldiers followed, leaving only the dead behind. Dawn broke over the Crystal Palace in shades of purple and gold. The 3 moons had set, and the sun was rising on a new day. Servants moved quietly through the halls, cleaning away the evidence of the night's violence. Bodies were carried out, and blood was scrubbed from ancient stone, and broken doors were removed for repair. The noble houses that had supported Vothran were already sending messengers to beg for mercy. They claimed they had been deceived. They claimed they had not known the full extent of the general's plans. They lied, of course, but lies were the currency of politics, and Queen Sarethka knew how to spend them. She sat alone in her private chambers, watching the sunrise through the tall windows. She had not slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Marcus moving through the battle like a dancer of death. She saw the bodies falling around him. She saw the cold efficiency in his eyes, and then she remembered the warmth of his hands and the sound of his laughter and the way he held her. After nightmares, 2 men living in the same body. Which one was real? A soft knock came at her door. "Enter," she said. Marcus stepped inside. He had bathed and changed into fresh linen clothes. His Hair was damp and his face was clean. He looked exactly like the harmless gardener she had known for 5 years, but she could never unsee what lay beneath that mask. "You wanted to speak with me," he said. "Yes." She gestured to a chair across from her own. He sat down and waited in silence. She studied him for a long moment, trying to find the right words. "You could have controlled me," she finally said. "You knew my secrets and my fears and my weaknesses. Yes, you could have blackmailed me or manipulated me or used our relationship to influence Imperial policy. Yes, why did you not?" He was quiet for a moment. "When I first arrived here, I had a mission," he said. "Gather intelligence and maintain the peace. That was all I cared about. And now things are different." "How?" He looked out the window at the rising sun, somewhere in the middle of all the pretending. "I stopped pretending about some things. I do not understand." He turned back to face her, and his gray eyes were open in a way she had never seen before. "I was supposed to learn about your empire," he said, "but I also learned about you. I learned that you carry the weight of 10,000 years of tradition on your shoulders. I learned that you stay awake at night worrying about your people. I learned that you love poetry, but you hide it because you think it makes you seem weak. I learned that you are brave and stubborn and kind, in ways you never let anyone see." She felt something twist in her chest. "Those things have nothing to do with your mission," she said. "No." "Agreed. They do not." "Then why did you bother learning them?" "Because I wanted to." The words hung in the air between them. "How much of it was real?" she asked. "The conversations and the laughter and the nights we spent together. How much was mission? And how much was you?" He leaned forward and rested his elbows on his knees. "The mission was real," he said slowly. "The intelligence gathering was real. The man who kills without hesitation is real. That is part of who I am, and it always will be. But so was the rest. So was every moment I spent wishing I did not have to lie to you. So was every night I held you and wondered what would happen when you learned the truth. So was the fear I felt when I saw Lothran's soldiers coming for you." She stared at him. "You were afraid. Terrified," he admitted. "Not of dying, but of failing to protect you. Why? Because somewhere along the way, I fell in love with you." The words hit her like a physical blow. She had expected more lies. She had expected manipulation or justification or cold calculation. She had not expected this raw, vulnerable honesty. "You cannot expect me to simply forget 5 years of deception," she said. "I do not. You cannot expect me to trust you. I know. You cannot expect things to go back to the way they were." "No," he said. "I cannot." He stood up and walked to the window. "I have already contacted my superiors," he said. "The human special operations team will leave today. And what about you? That is your decision to make. You could have me executed," he continued. "I deceived you and spied on you and technically committed acts of war on your soil. You would have every right to demand my death. Is that what you think I want?" He turned to face her. "I do not know what you want," he said. "I thought I understood you, but now I realize I only saw what you let me see. We are both wearing masks." She stood and crossed the room to stand before him. She was still taller than him by more than a foot. She still had 4 arms and scales and 6 eyes. She was still the queen of an empire that spanned 3 star systems. He was still a small, soft human who had turned out to be one of the most dangerous creatures she had ever known. "My people underestimated humans," she said. "I will not make that mistake again." "Neither will I," he replied. "I underestimated you as well. Oh, I thought you would have me killed the moment you learned the truth. Instead, you listened. Instead, you gave me a chance to explain." She reached out with one of her hands and touched his face. His skin was warm and soft, just as it had always been. "You are still the man who made me laugh," she said. "You are still the man who held me after nightmares. Those parts of you were real. Yes, then perhaps we can build something real from the ruins of your lies." His eyes widened in surprise. "You would give me another chance." "I am giving us another chance," she corrected. "That there will be no more masks, no more deceptions. If you ever lie to me again, I will kill you myself." A small smile crossed his face. It was not the gentle mask he had worn for 5 years. It was something sharper and more honest. "I would expect nothing less from my queen." She took his hand in hers. "Come," she said. "We have a lot of work to do. The noble houses need to be brought to heel, and the military needs new leadership, and the treaty with Earth needs to be renegotiated." "That sounds complicated," he said. "It will be good," he replied. "I have always liked a challenge." They walked out together into the new day, the human and the alien queen, the spy and the sovereign too. Dangerous creatures who had found something unexpected in each other. Behind them, the sun rose higher over the crystal palace, and across the galaxy a message was being sent from world to world. Warning and a lesson and a promise all wrapped into one. Never underestimate a human, especially the quiet ones. The ones who smile too easily and ask too few questions and seem content to tend their gardens in peace. Those are the most dangerous of all, because when they finally show you what they really are, it is already too late. The Lanthi learned that lesson in blood and fire, and they never forgot it centuries later. Historians would study the alliance that was forged. That day, they would write about the human who became a king and the queen who learned to trust again. They would analyze the political implications and the military innovations and the cultural exchanges that followed. But the simple truth at the heart of it all was this: two people found each other across the vast emptiness of space. They lead and they fought and they nearly destroyed everything, and then they chose to try again. That is what humans do. They survive, they adapt, they find a way forward. Even when all hope seems lost, and sometimes, just sometimes, they find love in the most unlikely places. That is the real lesson of Marcus Cole and Queen Sarithka. That is why their story is still told, and that is why the galaxy learned to respect humanity, not because of their weapons or their technology or their numbers, but because of their stubborn refusal to give upon anything or anyone, including each other.